What is the price for an anime? Anywhere from $8 to $15 a month. Those of you who are a little more intelligent, it's free. The cost of making an anime, the souls of many underpaid and unrecognized animators. What is the price of manga? Around $11 unless you get a deluxe edition. The cost of making a manga, for some it's their time, but for many it also costs their well-being, be it mental and physical. Today's case will be my thoughts on YuYu Hakusho and a look at what it took for Togashi to create a series that changed Shonen forever, but ultimately cost him in the long run. I have a dear friend of mine that has been in my messages asking for this video for over 430 days. Another friend has also been extremely persistent in trying to get me to watch this and also play Tekken. Hey, stop, cut it out. He's white. One day I'll cover Sensui and you can all make jokes. Being a fan of Hunter x Hunter, the more modern Togashi work, given the 2011 anime remake, and just being an anime and manga fan in general, you can't go long without hearing about YuYu. Yusuke, Kuwabara, Hiei, Kurama, and in my case, since I do a good amount of stuff on villains, Toguro and Sensui. If you ever participate in a conversation about the best tournament arcs, Dark Tournament is sure to be mentioned as the heavy favorite. When it comes to manga released in Weekly Shonen Jump, almost all of it can be traced back to one thing: Dragon Ball. But after that, when it comes to series in the 90s that carried an insane amount of influence into things that have been successful after, it can be drawn back to Slam Dunk, Rurouni Kenshin, and YuYu Hakusho. You know, sometimes the best worlds in fiction are the ones that don't hold your hand, actually throw you in with nothing but curiosity, and somehow that struggle becomes fun. Which actually brings me to today's sponsor, Go-Go Muffin. Now, Go-Go Muffin is a cozy fantasy MMORPG built for mobile. It's the kind of game that doesn't rush you. It lets you level up, explore, and take on dungeons at your own pace. You can even switch between manual and auto battle whenever you want, which is perfect if you just want to chill but still feel like you're making progress. And right now, Go-Go Muffin is doing something really special, a full-on collaboration with Shangri-La Frontier. Some of you might remember me surprisingly enjoying this series, a story about diving headfirst into a brutal VR world and finding meaning in the chaos. Now the same world is colliding with muffins, and it looks incredible. From October 22nd to November 18th, you can grab collab-exclusive outfits like Emule the Deadly Rabbit and Saiger Zero, straight from the Shangri-La Frontier's high-tech madness. There are also new mount paints like Lycagon the Night Slayer and Tactical Mount Kirin, and a ton of limited-time events where you can take down the 7 Colossi or even just log in daily to earn exclusive rewards. It's the kind of crossover that actually feels like both worlds make sense together. Fantasy meeting VR chaos, with that chill, idle-style pacing that keeps it relaxing. So if you want to check it out for yourself and support the channel, the collaboration is live right now. Use my link down in the description to download Go-Go Muffin, join the Shangri-La Frontier event, and maybe slay a dragon or two while you're at it. Debuting in late 1990, YuYu Hakusho would be Togashi's big break after an okay run with his previous series. When it came to YuYu Hakusho, I went back and checked out certain portions in the manga for comparison, be it good but mostly bad things that happened. More on that later. I experienced YuYu, however, through the anime, and I watched a lot of it with my buddies that have been trying to put me on for a long time. This is how it went. Bro, you know what? I'm fucking sick and tired of these JJK motherfuckers, these Chainsaw Man motherfuckers. Let me tell you something. I don't hear go unless YuYu Hakusho is next to it. Yeah. Hey. I don't hear go unless Yusuke is next to it. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I don't hear go unless Cool Goat is next to it. I don't hear go unless Hiei is next to it. Yeah.
Talk to
I don't hear go unless Kurama is next to it.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to hear go unless Toguro is next to it. Hey, you know what?
Yes, sir.
Let me tell you something. Fuck Hunter x Hunter.
Whoa!
I actually watched the first few episodes in the sub before they joined along, and when they saw that I was watching in the sub, they improvised methods of torture and threatened me with them. So while some of the voices were a bit annoying at first, admittedly, I ended up really appreciating the personality that comes through, especially during important scenes. You know what I didn't appreciate about the anime, though? I understand that getting weekly viewers hooked was an important thing for anime back then, but major deaths are spoiled, so I had to find a dub version that didn't translate the title cards. Still, I can say with confidence that YuYu Hakusho has one of my favorite first episodes ever. A strong hook at the start with a dead main character who's given the choice to return or continue to the afterlife, believing that there isn't a reason for him to return to the land of the living until he sees his own funeral, with the likes of Keiko, Kuwabara, and his own mother, who is a mom in the biological sense only really, is devastated, which makes Yusuke reconsider. It really is a strong emotional start that gets you invested, Add on top of that the reputation of what comes later, and a banger of an opening, and I knew I was in for a great time. And then the next 20 episodes happened. Look, I have heaps of praise for this series, but much like Rurouni Kenshin, and a lot of series for that matter, the first arc is a lot of figuring things out. With some great episodes, like episode 7 delving into Kurama for the first time and immediately making him a favorite, and then some episodes that I wanted to skip badly, like episode 8. Now, I'm not sure how true it is that Togashi didn't have Hiei planned out early on to be a long-term character, but it would explain a lot given how infuriatingly bad his dialogue is for that whole episode. Yusuke was validating me in real time, telling Hiei to please shut up. At least he wasn't as bad as Suzaku though. But yeah, the first 20 episodes are a bit up and down. One of the big questions I had was them alluding to Yusuke's nature and how that would determine the hatched egg. At first, I didn't understand what the conflict was, since sure, his teachers and other people might misunderstand Yusuke as some brute with a bad heart, but everything we see as the audience that those in Spirit World would be aware of from episode 1 painted a pretty good person. In retrospect, the way Togashi incorporated the egg in Yusuke's nature and how that would be a huge piece in the later arcs was impressive. By this point, the foundation of the personalities of the main group has been established, with much that can still be done in terms of backstory and context for the likes of Hiei, Kurama, Genkai, and even Koenma, while still being pushed by events in the present, as will mainly be the case for Kuwabara, who quickly became one of the most likable characters ever. By episode 3, I was convinced that the world needs more Kuwabaras, and he only gets better. And Yusuke, who will face his greatest challenge yet, is Spirit Detective. Enter Toguro.
Oh, he's so cool!
Togashi stated in an interview that he started to shift his input of emotion towards the villains, and boy does it show. I remember being pretty frustrated having to sit through the Suzaku episodes, leaning back in my chair taking notes, and then episode 22 and more so episode 23 happened, and I immediately sat up and was fully interested again. The voice, the presentation, the dialogue, especially the dialogue, is such a massive step up from any of the other antagonists we've gotten up to that point. Clearly being a force of nature, but saying just enough to create intrigue while still leaving room for Togashi to take this character places I never expected. Each time Tugoro was in the scene, I liked his character more. Oh, and his brother's there also. This stretch was also important as it added more to Hiei, having Yukina be his long-lost sister and planting the seeds for what would end up being one of the best stretches later on in the anime. Also in this stretch, we get a very clear demonstration that Yusuke doesn't give a damn about who he has to punch. Dope. Then we get episode 26. Along with how Dragon Ball handled Frieza and Namek, this was an amazing way of stating the wide gap between your hero and villain. It's simple, but it works. Just pulls up, hey, parking lot now. Flexes on him, leaves. Alright. We also get a good explanation of Dark Tournament, putting into motion a legendary arc and the possibility of humans displaying cruelty on the same level as the demons Yusuke is tasked to handle. Overall, I think Dark Tournament is almost perfect. And this isn't what stopped it from being perfect, but I gotta throw it out here now because if not I'll forget. I couldn't ignore how funny it is, but Kuwabara's older sister having feelings for Sakio was so unnecessary, and I'm glad it's there because it was probably the best piece of unintentional comedy. But in this arc, the leaps taken with each of the important characters in the cast is all you could ever want inside of a tournament arc, on top of the amazing fights that take place. Hiei using the Black Flame, where Kishimoto would take inspiration from Amaterasu, Yusuke versus Chu, and of course the final battles between Team Urameshi and Team Toguro. What started as a simple tournament arc with a clear David versus Goliath dynamic evolved into a beautiful exploration of human mortality and what it truly means to be strong. The unfortunate responsibility and cost of being strong, but also where you stand where you aren't strong enough to protect those you care about. Hiei and Kurama take steps forward in terms of strength, and we get to see more sides to them as Hiei changes and we see Kurama's true form, but this arc turned Kuwabara and Yusuke into men. Especially when Yusuke takes Genkai's energy and feels what it's like to root for the Raiders. Oh, and Yusuke's egg thingy hatched. Jokes that aren't really jokes aside, the real turning point comes at episode 52, but we will get to that in a second. This arc is really a massive success on all fronts. Not just in terms of the writing, but at this time, YuYu Hakusho really exploded into the mainstream in the top of the rankings. The perfect storm of events took place in the early to mid-90s, with the series getting the anime adaptation while firing on all cylinders in terms of the manga. On top of that, the magazine was white hot, having its greatest peak ever in 1995, with that magazine selling more than 6.5 million copies. Also landing in third place amongst popularity surveys behind Slam Dunk and Dragon Ball in 92 and 93. This is the dream for every creator, to feel like you're making your best work and it's finally getting its flowers in real time. Sadly, that wasn't entirely the feeling for Togashi. Around the Chu fight, he started having physical difficulties. Ironic enough, while watching this part of the series and Chapter Black, your boy had to get surgery for severe nerve pain, which I wouldn't wish on anyone, but man, did I ever resonate with a creator while researching their struggles. On top of this, things like comparing himself art-wise to the creator of Bastard, coming in behind to Slam Dunk on rankings and believing it should have won the award you got instead, sleeping around 5 hours a night because of the infamously harsh schedule of being a mangaka in Weekly Shonen Jump especially, while fighting your editorial team because you want to be more bold with your ideas, and you ultimately arrive at a state of mind where you feel more relief than joy when finishing and having the desire to quit at the start of your next arc. Not only do I have the utmost respect for Togashi continuing his work while dealing with all of this at once and constantly throughout his career, but to turn that emotion into a source where you then pour it into the tone of the series and for your major villains is brilliant. And this brings me back to Toguro. My expectations for Toguro were high, but damn! Toguro is not only a really well laid out character, clearly being business first, but hinting at levels of restraint and a lack of over-the-top sadistic cruelty that separates him from the people he associates himself with, and it also hints at a human origin, but he gains new layers even at the very end when I thought we got it all. But I can feel the elements of frustration coming from a real place that allows it to be explored properly and click. Toguro is revealed as Genkai's former lover, who chose to become a demon to gain strength absolute, not wanting to age and hating what he sees as the human experience, that we spend our young years trying to figure out who we are and what we want. And once we do figure it out, we are then doomed to grow old and our bodies no longer able to keep up with that desire. What's the point of strength if you can't use it? If that isn't Togashi pouring his own frustrations into a character, then I don't know what is. But Toguro being someone who fears aging and death is an extremely human thing, especially when even more is revealed later. This brings me back to episode 52. If there was an exhibit of the best episodes in anime ever, and this isn't included, tear the exhibit down, cause wow. Not only did this add so much to Genkai and Toguro, but it justified Togoro's unexplained fascination with Yusuke up to that point, and most importantly, made the inevitable final battle between the two extremely personal, allowing such a huge moment to really sink in the very next episode, with one crying his heart out and the other simply asking for orange juice over ice, while helping a plan to create a tunnel to connect the human and demon world. While previous rounds of the tournament had really good moments, everything after episode 52 is why this arc is considered the best tournament arc ever. The final showdown between Team Urameshi and Team Toguro, starting with Kurama versus Karasu. Now look, when a person you're fighting is talking to you the way my friends talk to me in group chats, you might want to keep your distance. I had my eye on you, Togashi, with some of the stuff in Hunter x Hunter, but after finishing YuYu, I know what kind of man you are. Unfortunately for Karasu, Kurama's capable of cold cruelty, and this is a beautiful shot, and the fight had a clever conclusion to set up the stakes for the final fight. The next fight with Hiei was an iconic moment, and great animation with tons of amazing shots throughout. Kuwabaro's always fun to watch, but I started to feel bad about him being the punching bag for the first half of every fight that he's in, but he manages to pull through, setting up the long-awaited final battle. It doesn't get much better than this. Toguro killing his own brother for disrespecting Genkai was such a good detail. Again, another moment where Toguro displays a humanity that ends up adding so much to an already outstanding antagonist, and then the fight happens. The ultimate clash of what strength really is about. There are so many awesome moments in this fight. As much as I love the writing with Toguro, this guy was just so damn cool, and it didn't stop. I have the shot of him walking down the fiery path etched into my mind. But going back to the real conflict that is presented between Yusuke and Toguro, the difference between the strength used for selfish reasons and the strength that comes from others and for others. Yusuke drew that line despite suffering the loss of Genkai, and when Toguro was at his strongest, the loss of Kuwabara, unlocking the true power of Yusuke and the final clash resulting in the defeat of Toguro. Sakio then decides to shut down the project to create a tunnel connecting both worlds, And this man's backstory was almost as funny as his dynamic with Kuwabara's sister. I had a great family, and I hated them, and I love being evil and shit. That isn't it word for word, but in essence. Still, Yusuke versus Toguro, all-time fight, all-time villain, and there was still more. So yeah, when I thought I'd been taken to the moon, YuYu Hakusho then brings me back and takes me to the moon again, with episode 66 further proving what I was watching, it's just special. Adding the final chunk to Toguro, and that is deep down, despite all he did, he never really lost his humanity. That his reason for wanting that strength was the death of his students that he wasn't strong enough to protect, while still admitting to a level of selfishness in his own actions, asking to be sent to limbo where he will suffer for eternity. A heartfelt and final goodbye to Genkai, with a quote that really brings it all in, and made a character that already resonated and was intriguing hit home. Quote, "The way to atone was to never be vulnerable again." End quote. The art direction in this episode and music in this wonderful anime. In the next segment, we will talk about the other guy, but when it comes to who I think is the best villain in YuYu, it really depends on which one I'm talking about in the moment, because both get me super passionate. Pause. Well, okay, Itsuki's kind of spitting, but we'll get to that. But man, that's the GOAT! Look, I know there's a lot of grifting nowadays, and believe me, I know who y'all are, but I got the Toguro layout in a server, I did this doodle, I'm currently seeing how much steroids I could take. Newer anime, at least good ones, have come a long way in terms of animation, and really pacing is the main thing that they've improved in. But in terms of the characters, I don't know. You know what? Fuck it. I do. Respectfully, if it ain't for a few exceptions, I don't want to hear it. I apologize because this is off script, but JJK could never! Look, I'm just saying. Toguro, Sensui, to hell with it. This ain't even Yu Yu Hakusho, but Shishio Makoto from Kenshin? What y'all know about Shishio? Y'all know shit, so I'm gonna have to make a video. I'm sorry, I'm excited. Sadly, I do have one sole issue with the Dark Tournament arc, and that is the revival of Genkai along with the fake out of Kuwabara's death. I will say, it is the best way to undo a character's death since Kuwabara's was clearly planned out, and Genkai's made sense given the wish granted for winning the tournament. It could also be argued that it is important for Toguro to preserve her body, but with that in mind, I still couldn't help but feel cheated, especially because as soon as Kuwabara was believed to be dead, I thought the perfect dilemma was put in place. I tried giving it some time to see if it would settle with me better, but it didn't, and this is the way I envision things going in retrospect, if you'll hear me out. Episode 52 remains the same, and we allow for Yusuke to feel devastated, and then be reminded or told of the wish granted to the winner of the tournament. Now determined to beat Toguro in order to bring Genkai back, Toguro sees this as an opportunity to push Yusuke, because even if he wins now, Yusuke would have to choose between Genkai and Kuwabara, the price for not being strong enough, and now he has to decide who to bring back. This helps keep the intention Toguro had to bring out the best of Yusuke, and once the fight is over, Genkai can reach out to him just like she does during the fight, telling him the choice is easy, pick Kuwabara. Going back to her quote from before, to never run from the fight of time and death. Wanting to be with Toguro in the afterlife while he still insists he must atone alone. Fully preserving that emotional, bittersweet feeling that is rubbed in even more in episode 65. The obvious issue with this is then some stuff has to be redone in the next arc given the role she plays early on. But I really wish I just didn't feel cheated by just solving everything at the end. Still, I hold this arc in the highest regard, and Toguro has easily cemented himself as one of my favorite characters in anime. But there is more to be done with Yusuke and all the others in the form of a tape, and a man who wishes to destroy all of humanity by continuing the creation of the tunnel in another masterclass, Chapter Black. What was the most painful thing that happened while you were writing Yu Yu Hakusho? There were two instances. The first was when I was drawing color pages during the Yusuke's fight with Chu in the Dark Tournament, and my physical condition was really bad. And the second time was around the time Yusuke was fighting Sensui, when I didn't want to draw manga anymore and I felt nauseous just sitting down to draw. I asked the editorial office if I couldn't quit Yu Yu Hakusho for the first time at this point. Before really getting into Chapter Black, taking more time to discuss Togashi and his state at this point is important, not only because these sentiments are reflected in Sensui and overall the tone of this arc, but explain the unfortunate circumstances surrounding the ending of the manga after this final push and how insane it is that he ever picked up a pen again. It's safe to say that Togashi financially was in a good enough position to just live off the YuYu IP for the rest of his life, especially when you consider him marrying the author of Sailor Moon. That bank account should be fine. I'm not pocket watching. Where I'm going with this is adding on top of making one of the most successful series of all time, you should be secure in that sense. Having bad sleep, chronic pain and nausea and feeling held back by your editorial team or by the magazine every time you wish to subvert, what is the motivation for this man to continue or to ever work on manga again? What could possibly make the steep cost of your well-being worth it? There aren't detailed specifics like things in his childhood that we can really look at and say, deep down, this is why. But given what Togashi has expressed, like many mangaka, it boils down to an obsessive love for their art and craft. Quote, I don't want to die from overwork. If I die, I want it to be when I'm having fun or when I'm drawing manga for fun, end quote. So not only is it insane that we have Hunter x Hunter, I'm glad that he's been taking his time and doing it on his terms, but it is really important to keep in mind the state he was in throughout the creation of another fantastic arc. Sadly, his determination to push through is a cost that is being paid to this very day. Still, the desire to push the envelope can be felt with Chapter Black, exploring what happens when a heroic person only sees the world in two colors, allowing for Yusuke to be given an element of gray. A tense arc from the beginning to the very end, masterfully puppeteered by Shinobu Sensui. Well, after the first 3 episodes of the arc, which I didn't really care for, but regardless. Once Sensui starts putting his plan into motion, the only thing consuming my thoughts was how badly I wanted to know about this character I had heard so much about. That Kuwabara can cut through dimensions and is the GOAT, and how ashamed I was for chuckling at the name Seaman every time. Overall, this arc carries a heavier tone than the previous, given the subject matter, and feels a lot more like a detective case with an aspect of mystery, which is a nice change of pace. Because as much as I love Dark Tournament, it would have been a bit deja vu-ish if we immediately entered another tournament arc. I mean, that would suck, right? Having this grand drama be built up with the very essence of the characters tested and put into question, only for it to wrap up in a nice, convenient tournament. Yep. Also, episode 74, the fight between Yusuke and the evil doctor, I don't know why this fight, out of all the fights in this arc, was given such insane animation, but hey, I'm not complaining. Still, the question for me at first was how would Togashi make Sensui feel personal, since Toguro already killed Yusuke's mentor and closest friend. Sure, he could have had Sensui do it and actually leave them dead, but the same trick doesn't really work as well the second time. There is tension in knowing his plan to open a path for A and even S-class demons to cross over to the human realm, and that Toguro was only an upper B-class demon. But how would I care about Sensui himself, since wanting to kill all humans needs one hell of an explanation? Being the leader of this group of powerful psychics, showing them the Chapter Black tape, which contains the worst of what humans have done to demonkind, but why? As soon as it's revealed that Sensui was the former spirit detective, I immediately went, oh, shit. I mentioned earlier, but having to pick between Toguro and Sensui is like having to pick between Kurt Angle and Eddie Guerrero. You can't go wrong with either, but if you start talking about one being way better than the other, you should get a gentle slap upside the back of the head. Once we get Sensui's backstory, the real conflict of the arc, which I touched on a little bit earlier, is put into full effect. This isn't just someone who saw evil and wishes for it to be punished, but a person that believed he was walking down the right path. Someone who dedicated his life since he was young to upholding justice, only to have his heart and mind shattered at discovering that he might have been fighting for the wrong side. At the feast of human vices, Sensui's sense of right and wrong is flipped on its head. Quote, no humans were here. Not one, end quote. Koenma realized that Sensui was only capable of seeing things in black and white. If Toguro was frustration and hatred towards the limitations of what humans can't do, Sensui is disillusionment and hatred for what humans are capable of. Despite the grandiosity of his plan, at the core of it is something that's pretty understandable. It's hard seeing some of the stuff that we see every single day on our feeds and on the news, and the way to deal with that for most of us is to stop caring. But for Sensui, his entire life was upholding justice, and for someone who sees it firsthand in real time, sadly not caring isn't an option. What was his biggest strength ultimately proved to be a double-edged sword, and that is why Koenma decided to make Yusuke the next spirit detective. Sensui kidnapping Kuwabara because of his newly found dimension slicing ability, and having a backup planned after Gourmet, who can eat people and steal their powers, was a nice touch. After Gourmet was killed, I was like, how the hell does he? And he was like, ah yes, rage bait him into cutting down the barrier. Itsuki is worth mentioning real quick, since he matters when it comes to Sensui and the finale of his character. Was also stated to be one of Togashi's favorite characters. On top of that, I wrote episode 85, 8 minutes and 8 seconds cock-munching Sensui. And that was before I knew that he wished it was literal. But just when I thought I had the character figured out, a curveball was thrown, adding to the moment Sensui's mind shattered, because that wasn't a figure of speech. Sensui, because of the trauma of what happened, legit developed multiple personalities in order to cope with the reality of things, and to be able to enact this punishment on humanity while keeping the main personality, Shinobu, pure. This is where delving into Yusuke a bit is important. There is a contrast taking place between Yusuke and Sensui, someone who chooses to view the good in people versus someone focused on the evil of humanity, but that isn't the best way to put it. This isn't a matter of black and white, where each one is representing one of those colors. A more accurate way of putting Yusuke versus Sensui is that Sensui exists in black and white purely, while Yusuke is a character that is occupying the space in between. That is the key difference in clash between the two. This is something Togashi seemed to want to explore even more in the next arc, but we will get into that. But for now, Yusuke is a character that has had his heroic qualities, but deep down it's also been made clear that he enjoys fighting. His upbringing wasn't a good and loving one, and he has experienced disappointment and known the flaws of people since a young age, in comparison to someone like Sensui, who can be described as pure. Too pure. Someone incapable of taking the bad with the good and having nuance. It was also nice seeing Koenma get a strong character moment when facing Sensui himself, but that doesn't stop him, and in front of all of his friends, and in one of the most impactful scenes in YuYu Hakusho, Yusuke is killed. At first I was curious where Togashi was going to take this with Yusuke. Since the start, I kept wondering why they were so worried about the egg that had hatched despite his heroic actions. What could possibly be up? Then we learn Yusuke is the descendant of an S-class demon, which explains a whole lot in retrospect and sets up events in the next arcs. These episodes were flying. That's how good it was to sit through. As much as I appreciate Togashi taking that extra step to ensure things make sense and fitting pieces of the puzzle together, what makes Yu Yu Hakusho special, and Hunter x Hunter for that matter, is the ability for characters, regardless of their role in the story, to light a fire in your spirit. Look, to hell with this script, let me tell you something, okay? It's important that things make sense, but not just to make sense for the hell of it. It's to keep you in the moment so that moment can create magic where it makes you feel something. I think we can all agree that Kuwabara isn't the most intricate character, but when Yusuke died and he's all like, "You're Michi," you tell me you don't feel nothing? That made me feel something, man. Yusuke coming back in his demon form, defeating Sensui, well, sort of, and the revelation of Sensui actually dying from an illness. You did it again, Togashi. Itsuki choosing to take Sensui into the void with him for eternity and not allow Spirit World to take him was a powerful moment in the anime. When it comes to the manga, again, we will get to that in a bit. While Dark Tournament is an arc that was ahead of its time when it came out and is great today, I think Chapter Black still has a place of its own that only ages better and better over time. While there are a lot of cool things to Yusuke early on and good character moments, and I think Toguro helped push Yusuke's character, ultimately I think it was Chapter Black and Sensui that was Togashi's vehicle in exploring more facets of Yusuke that made him really interesting. Hence why delving into his character for a bit took quite a while to get into in regards to the video. And in general, I think Togashi's best moments of character exploration outside of Toguro and Genkai happen in Chapter Black and in the next arc. This brings me to the final arc in Yu Yu Hakusho, Three Kings. This is where the toll of working on the series unfortunately kicked in, because despite all the great things in this arc, it is ultimately a big case of what could have been, but I'm getting ahead of myself. The beginning of this arc was by far the strongest to any of them. Yusuke not being sure about who he is and where he belongs, having enough downtime to think and be introspective upon learning about his true nature. I wish, see, this is, okay, I don't mean to get, okay. I know this is about Yu Yu Hakusho, but I'm not going to say the name of the series, right? Because I don't want to come off as a hater, but you're all going to know it when I say, when you have your main character go through some earth-shattering shit, some like world-view-breaking thing, right? That absolutely should alter the way that they are and messes them up for a little bit, taking some time to just slow things down and allow us to get in that character's mind space does so much, instead of just jumping into the next arc and then you ultimately end up with a big old cluster. Anyways, point is, Yusuke benefits a lot from the events that happen in this arc, showing a lot of maturity, and it really sunk in when he promised Keiko that he would return to marry her. The real drama of the arc is Yusuke learning about his ancestor Raizen that is dying because of his refusal to eat humans, which is upsetting the balance of the three most powerful demons, known as the Three Kings. Raizen wanted Yusuke to stand for his side, Yomi, an old friend of Kurama's, reached out to him, and Hiei received a message from Kuro, setting up what I was hoping to be an insane clash between three friends now thrown into the conflict for the fate of the demon realm and ultimately all of the realms. This is where it's important to make the distinction between the anime and the manga, and why I now know the reasons my friends were adamant that I watch the anime. The manga does have its pros, with Makuro's backstory and how graphic and heartbreaking it is, adding to that fight that does take place between her and Hiei. Her character is so good in the manga, while it is solid in the anime. Read the manga if you haven't to see what she's about. Also, the insane reveal that King Yama was tampering with demons, but the cons outweigh the pros so much. In fact, whoever was in charge of the anime was really a miracle worker, considering he had to salvage such a rushed conclusion. And some people used rush a little loosely sometimes. No, this is bad. Like, this is wow. There were a couple things that set off the alarms in my brain, however. One was seeing the episode count. As the pieces fell into place, I saw the amount of episodes left and braced for impact. The other thing was that I only ever hear about Toguro and Sensui. Not saying conversations around Three Kings doesn't exist, but I never hear about YuYu Hakusho having a great ending in comparison to something like Code Geass, which that's one of the big things you hear about it. Or the two most praised antagonists have nothing to do with the finale. I prepared myself to be disappointed. Again, the anime makes this so much better, and this is where I would like to give flowers to the character that I believe benefited the most from this arc outside of just Yusuke, and that's Hiei. Going from a generic villain of the week character upon his introduction and turning into a character who is struggling to find a reason to live, culminating in a dope fight between Makuro and Hiei. Sensational. And it's worth mentioning that Kurama is one of my favorite characters. And I actually failed to mention the moment he had in Chapter Black upon having to kill the kid, which I've always seen that gif, but I never knew the context. And and while he does have some good moments in this final arc, I still think he doesn't get as much in comparison to Yusuke and Hiei. And I believe that's ultimately because we never got to see the fulfillment of Togashi's original plans between Kurama and Yomi. Sadly, I just can't get over the feeling of being let down by having this arc wrap up in another tournament. Which again, the fight between Hiei and Makuro and Yomi versus Yusuke did a lot to still make this arc feel like it gave me something, but it is very evident that Togashi was done at this point. In a very ironic sense, when Yusuke just gives up and is like, I don't have a reason to fight anymore, it feels like the overall sentiment towards the manga was the same. And while that moment is very powerful for Yusuke's character, it could have been so much more given what would have been the original plans for this arc. It still didn't stop me though from getting emotional while watching that very last episode and letting the credits play. Getting to watch that final episode with the boys is a memory I will hold near and dear for a very long time. It's really sad to see Togashi apologizing in his letter, explaining his reasons for YuYu Hakusho ending the way he did, feeling that the pain outweighed the joy of working on it. As grateful as I am that he made and is still working on Hunter x Hunter, the creation of one of the pillars of manga and weekly Shonen Jump that forever left the mark cost the ending of the manga, which impacted the anime and cost his health and well-being. The series that defined the childhood of many, and the price for that is still being paid to this day. Regardless of what could have been though, I'd say we turned out pretty lucky to have YuYu Hakusho.